The following Parkinson's Path podcast is provided by Lianna Marie with All About Parkinson's and Answers for Elders Radio.
And welcome back to segment number 3 with Lianna Marie with allaboutparkinsons.com. And we're talking about the whole path of Parkinson's. How do we cope? How do we focus? And now we're talking about being empowered with Parkinson's. Lianna, I'm very interested in what you mean by this.
Okay. Yes. Well, this is a big topic. I like talking about I think anyone likes to be empowered now that we use that word a lot more, I think, than we used to back when I was younger. But this idea that we own our life, like when you are diagnosed with a chronic illness and it feels in an instant, perhaps, that this isn't you anymore and it's Parkinson's, and it becomes, and we often talk about people who feel like their identities have completely shifted or changed and that they are Parkinson's now. And they're like, I don't want to be Parkinson's. I don't want to be a person with Parkinson's. I want to be me still. And often what happens over time, but with not even like no fault of the person with Parkinson's or the care partner, is that person ultimately does often loses control, what they feel like is control over their own life, because lots of different voices telling them what they should do with their diagnosis, what they should do with their, the progression of their disease, what they should do. There's a neurologist maybe suggesting this drug or this drug. There's a different doctors that are chiming in saying, no, but don't try this, do this is what you should do. And there's the person with Parkinson's going, well, I want to, like, what happened to me, like, and I want to be able to talk to folks right now about owning that and being able to take back that control to the extent that you can. It will vary depending on what stage you're in,
right,
of Parkinson's. And certainly we can speak to the, later stages where my mom had dementia, and your mom too, where that control does get taken away a little bit, because not completely, but because you can't make those decisions for yourself anymore.
Correct.
But in this case, the way I see empowerment is the ability to have control, to have autonomy, to be able to say in decision making and say, okay, you know what? I'm calling the shots. As much as I'm going to listen, I'm not saying, because everybody needs some experts in the field of Parkinson's. It's good that you consult with your doctor, and they're ultimately going to help you make the best decisions for you. But what I think we sometimes do is, and I agree why we do it, is we just say, okay, you doctor, you're the expert. You tell me what to do. And then you see them once a year, maybe once every 6 months. As a neurologist, often don't see their patients more often than that. And then you think, well, why aren't they, why did they suggest this and that's not working or whatever? And then you don't see them for another year and you're like, oh, okay, well, that's not working for me. And over time, my mom realized this, that doctors don't know her completely because they're only seeing a very small portion of what her life looks like. And B, even if they are really, really, really up to speed on Parkinson's, that doesn't mean they know what my mom knows about her own body. Like this whole idea that you trust your own gut, you trust your intuition. If something's not quite right, I think this is where I wanted to go with the empowerment, is my mom over time learned, you know what, I am going to trust that. And if the doctor is saying something to me, I'm not suggesting you be combative with your doctor, but a lot of people say, what he said just didn't quite ring true. So then, and initially my mom just kind of went with it and said, all right, well, he's the doctor, I guess he knows best. Instead of saying, well, actually, doctor, can we talk about that? Because that doesn't seem like to be how my Parkinson's is showing up, right? Because we know that Parkinson's look different in every single person. So to be able to say, for my mom over time, to be empowered to say, you know what, and trust that I know me better than anybody knows me, and I'm going to tell my doctor or my nurse or my care partner, no, this is what I'm experiencing.
Sure.
And I think that is so good for everyone, because ultimately the person with Parkinson's has to live with that person with Parkinson's the most, right? You're living
Right.
with your life. You got to feel like you are in control of everything that you can control. And that will make you feel better. It'll ultimately make everybody's lives better because you're inputting, you're giving us feedback onto what is working, what's not, and how we can make your quality of life better. And so that's something that I just found that over the time I was with my mom, it was important.
There's a couple of things you said that really resonated with me. Number one, I really believe that, you do have a voice, and even, no matter who you are, and sometimes that voice has to come through your care partner. And, to learn, there's an absolute responsibility in being that care partner, is really understanding their highest values, their, what's most important. I know with my mom, I had to put a different hat on, because the things that were most important to her would not necessarily be the ones that would be most important to me. And I realized that I had to be her advocate. And so I made choices on her behalf that I wouldn't have made for myself. And that was kind of interesting, because I knew that it was her life. And that was the number one thing, I think, that as a care partner, realizing that, you have a responsibility to advocate for that person and their ideals, which means having those conversations up front, when you're, so that you understand that you're acting in their best interest. And then the second point that I really want to bring up too, and this is really the key of all of this, is establishing an area of trust between the care partner and the actual person that has a chronic illness, whatever that is. Because one of the things that happens is that, if you have a voice, and if you can trust that care partner is going to make those choices for you, that you're in good hands. I think a lot of the anxiety with families today is that trust factor isn't there. They may feel like, their son or daughter is not going to act in their best interest, because they're too busy with their own lives. So, I would admonish those that are listening to this podcast is take the time to learn what those values are. If you have a senior loved one, a husband, even a husband and wife. I've talked to my husband several times about, what would you think if, and some of the things kind of surprised me. You never know.
But see, you don't know until you ask.
No. And you think somebody so well, but you don't. And I
you're
think,
like, what? That's what you would want? I did not know that.
It's like, oh, you don't want a memorial service, really? or anything like that. You just don't know. And so those are the things I think that's really valuable about having these kind of conversations, and having that trust factor is empowering, because
absolutely,
you can trust that loved one and vice versa. And those are the two things that, come up for me as you're talking, because I think no matter what, when you can't speak for yourself, and there will be days when you can't, whether you're hurting, you're sad, you're in an emotional state, or you just, dementia or whatever that might be, you have to be able to trust someone. And that's the piece where, if we're care partners, our number one, I think, mission in this world is being trustworthy. And
for sure,
that person that
I want to say that this reminds me, because when I do my care talks for people with Parkinson's for care partners, I talk about the 3 no's, the 3 KNOWs. And that is no Parkinson's, but most important, and that's the least of the 3, no Parkinson's, know your loved one, your spouse, whomever you're caring for, and know yourself. Because all those 3 things, honestly, knowing Parkinson's is like this tiny little piece of the pie. Knowing your loved one, the person you're caring for, like you just said, so that you can develop that trust. Because what I thought was important to me, and like what would have been important to my mom, was not what got her inspired, or what got her laughing, or what got her encouraged, or what isn't. isn't the same as me. And we actually, maybe there's a little bit of psychology here. We got to start learning about understanding that all humans are not the same. Even if it's your mom and you're super close to your
No,
mom, it's not the same.
no.
She's not the same. And then knowing yourself is the last one, because how can I help anyone if I don't know what my limits and boundaries are and that kind of thing? And I think, like, I'm okay advocating for my mom and going to, to bat for her and going to a doctor's appointment with her. Not everyone is okay with that. So, but being able to communicate that with your loved one, your spouse, your trust, to get that trust and say,
Yes.
hey, this is our deal, right? This is what we're going to do. And we want to have those conversations in a perfect world well before, we have to have the conversation.
Exactly.
So
And Lianna, what you said is so valuable, because I think a lot of times we tend to not talk about the elephant in the room, and the fear that maybe mom may have over having a diagnosis like this. Be that person that they can talk to. And it almost goes back to our first segment, where just be there. But it's part of that consistency of, being that person and knowing that they can always count on you for something, but also at the same time, in knowing thyself, set healthy boundaries. Make sure that you have, of course, there's always exceptions if there's an emergency or something like that, but set a schedule. Make sure that they understand, what is expected on both sides, manage expectations.
The
and
expectations.
that's a big part of it.
For sure.
Yeah. So in our next segment, Lianna and I are going to be talking about standing strong. And I love how you titled these episodes. And so episode 4, Lianna and I are coming back right after this.
The preceding Parkinson's Path podcast is provided by Lianna Marie with All About Parkinson's and Answers for Elders Radio. To learn more about Lianna's story, her books, The Parkinson's Wall of Honor, and more, go to allaboutparkinsons.com.